Smith, a Republican and member of the House Homeland Security Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for talking to us. You know, if it hadn't been for the Patriot Act, it's possible that right now we'd be talking about the 9/11/2009 terror attack or terror attacks right now, isn't it?
Right. That is certainly true. As you just said, there have been 4 terrorist attacks or plots that have been disrupted by the FBI just in the last week. In the last several years, over 400 people killed around the world by terrorists, and who knows what would happen. And the problem here is that the terrorists just have to be successful one time, and Americans are going to lose their lives. Our law enforcement authorities have to be right every single time. And one of the tools that they've used to great advantage is the Patriot Act, particularly the surveillance and investigative provisions in that Patriot Act. But unfortunately, the Patriot Act is now scheduled to expire at the end of this year, just about 3 months away. Congress needs to reauthorize that and make sure those provisions stay intact and are continued.
Yeah, at the end of 2009, as you mentioned, there are 3 key national security provisions. They are set to expire. Right. One of them, surveillance such as wiretapping, which obviously just proved to work to prevent terrorism. So then why would some in Congress consider allowing these surveillance authorities to expire?
Right. The surveillance authority that we're talking about here that has worked so well just this last week is a wiretap authority that actually goes with the individual. It's not for a specific device. It's not just for one cell phone. It's for any cell phone the individual might use or any type of communication the individual might use. It's used now in other forms of crimes, but it needs to be used for terrorist acts. And there are some in Congress that I don't know what they're worried about. To me, we absolutely have to have it. Not too long ago, the FBI director testified before the Judiciary Committee and endorsed those provisions. So we need those surveillance tools for the FBI and for other law enforcement officials to be able to use in the future if we're going to stop these kinds of terrorist attacks.
That imam here in New York who tipped off Najibullah Zazi when he made that phone call and said that the FBI was on to him, that phone call would not have been tapped had it not been for the Patriot Act. So it goes to show that without the Patriot Act, Americans aren't as safe. That's a fact. And today, I mean, this past week, we've been proven time and time again that we can't really live safely without it. Another tool I want to talk about, it allows investigators to obtain the business and personal records of terror suspects. What if, now I just want to say, what if investigators weren't able to actually obtain Zazi's receipts where he went and he purchased all those explosives at a hardware store? How much harder would it have made it for prosecutors then to press charges had they not obtained those receipts?
Yes. If we did not have these 2 provisions, the wiretaps, the roving wiretaps they're called, and being able to get to the business or personal records of would-be terrorists, we simply would not be able to stop terrorist attacks. And that records provision that we need literally allows you to go, say, to a hardware store and say, we want to see what that individual bought. Obviously, that's common sense investigation. You have to be able to get those types of bits of information if you're going to build a case, stop a plot, or stop a terrorist attack. So those provisions are absolutely essential. I can't tell you why Congress seems to be dragging its feet. I'm hoping that the Democratic leaders will take it seriously. And Congress is supposed to adjourn in the next month or 2. We need to have these provisions approved, and we need for that Patriot Act to be continued. All
right. Clearly, there are plenty of terrorists on the streets plotting to harm Americans. According to the Pentagon, of the detainees who have previously been released from Gitmo, 1 in 7 have returned to terrorist activities. President Obama wants to release hundreds of the worst of the worst. This is a decision that you hope he plans on taking back, because if he closes Gitmo, what happens to all those terrorists? They join the ones that are in Queens, that are in Texas, that are in Illinois?
Right. I've been to Gitmo. It's a first-class facility. That's exactly where we need the terrorists to stay. There's no good reason to close it. There's no good reason to release any terrorists or would-be terrorists there. And if you transfer them to other countries, which is what we're trying to do, there's no certainty that those countries are going to detain those individuals. That's their decision. It's no longer our decision. So other countries can release those people, and then they're back in the battlefield, as you said, at least 1 out of 7, perhaps more. There's also no good reason to transfer them to the United States. The minute they set foot on U.S. soil, then they can be entitled to rights that only citizens should have, not terrorists. So the terrorists need to stay right where they are. That's at Guantanamo Bay facility there in Cuba, an American prison, and that's the safest place for them. It's also the safest place for them to be if you want to save American lives.
All right, Congressman.
I'm pleased today to come to the floor of the Senate to talk about the Patriot Act. I'm pleased that we have cracked open the door, that we will shed some light on the Patriot Act. I wish the door were wider open, the debate broader and more significant, but we will talk a little bit about the constitutionality today of the Patriot Act. Jefferson said that if we had a government of angels, we wouldn't have to care or be concerned about the power that we give to government. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't have angels in charge of our government. There have been times, even in our history, when government has invaded your household to take things from you. In the 1930s, government came into your household and said, "Give us your gold." Gold was confiscated in this country in 1933. Could there conceivably be a time when government comes into your house and says, "We want your guns"? Well, people say that's absurd. That would never happen. I hope that day never comes. I'm not accusing anybody of being in favor of that, but I am worried about a government that is sifting through millions of records without asking, are you a suspect? Without asking, are you in league with foreign terrorists? Are you plotting violent overthrow of your government? One of the provisions of the Patriot Act is called the library provision. They can look at the books you check out in the library. Well, people say, well, still a judge has to sign these warrants, but we changed the standard. The standard of the Fourth Amendment was probable cause. They had to argue or at least convince a judge that you were a suspect, that you were doing something wrong. Now the cause or the standard has been changed to relevance. So I don't know if I've been investigated. My Visa bills sometimes have been $5,000. Sometimes we pay for them over the phone, which is a wire transfer. Have I been investigated by my government? I don't know. It's secret. What I want are protection. Just because we believe in procedural protections, just because we believe in the Constitution, doesn't mean that we don't want to capture terrorists, but we just want to have some rules. I'll give you an analogy. Right now, you've been to the airport. Most of America has been to the airport at some point in time in the last year or two. Millions of people fly every day. But we're taking this shotgun approach. We think everyone's a terrorist. These are important constitutional questions. But when the Patriot Act came up, we were so frightened by 9/11 that it just flew through here. There weren't enough copies to be read. There was one copy at the time. No senator read the Patriot Act. It didn't go through the standard procedure. And look at what's happening now. The thing is with the Patriot Act is that it's so emotional, because anyone who stands up like myself and says we need to have protections for our people, that we shouldn't sift through every gun owner in America through their records, looking and just trolling through records. Interestingly, we have looked at 28 million electronic records when the Inspector General looked at this. 28 million electronic records. We've looked at 1,600,000 texts. Now, if you said to me, well, they asked a judge and they thought these were terrorists, I don't have a problem. Judge gives them a warrant and they look at these text messages or electronic records. But do you want them trolling through your Facebook? Do you want them trolling through your emails? Do you want a government that is unrestrained by law? We can fight. We can preserve our freedoms. We are who we are because of our freedoms and our individual liberty. If we give that up, we're no different than those who we oppose. Those who wish to destroy our country want to see us dissolve from within. We dissolve from within when we give up our liberties. But I guess most of my message is that we shouldn't be fearful. We shouldn't be fearful of freedom. We shouldn't be fearful of individual liberty. And they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to give up your liberty to catch criminals. You can catch criminals and terrorists and protect your liberty at the same time. There is a balancing act. But what we did in our hysteria after 9/11 was we didn't do any kind of balancing act. We just said, come and get it. Here's our freedom. Come and get it. I think we all want security. Nobody wants what happened on 9/11 to happen again. But I think we don't need to simplify the debate to such an extent that we simply say we have to give up our liberties. For example, I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me in Washington, other elected officials, and they say, we could have gotten Moussaoui, the 19th hijacker, if we'd had the Patriot Act. The truth of the matter is, that we didn't capture Moussaoui because we had poor police work. And ask yourself, did we fire anybody after 9/11? We gave people gold medals. We gave them medals of honor for their intelligent work after 9/11. To my knowledge, not one person was fired. What did we do? We passed the Patriot Act and said, come and take our liberties, make us safe. But to make us safe, we shouldn't give up our rights to protect what we read, to protect what we view, to protect where we go and who we associate. We shouldn't allow government to troll willy-nilly through millions of records. So I would ask in conclusion that as these amendments come forward, that people think about it, think about our constitutional protections, but don't go out and say that, you know, the senator from Kentucky doesn't want to capture terrorists, or that the senator of Kentucky wants people to have guns and to attack us. Because the thing is we can have reasonable philosophic debates about this, but we need to be having an open debate process. We need to talk about the constitutional protections, the protections that protect us all, and we need to be aware of that.